What's up, everybody? This is Zack. Yeah, I'm alive. I know a lot of people have been wondering, what's going on, dude? Are you going to podcast or what? Some threatening. That's not exactly true, but I am alive, and I am going to be podcasting more. So I want to do a quick episode sort of to talk about what the plan is going forward. So Mike is going to be doing some more episodes with me. You might remember Mike from one of the recent episodes. He's going to be joining me as a co-host as much as possible. I've got some cool upcoming episodes, including I'm bringing back TraumaSoft. We're going to talk about some new stuff that they're doing, and talking about all their cool software and other stuff. I'm going to be talking with someone from the CISA's Office of Bombing Prevention, which that will be very cool because we get to talk about things that go boom. I will be talking with a engineer, Army. Oh gosh, I'm going to screw up the title. Army engineer, also someone who blows stuff up. And so that will be a fun episode because I'm going to have Mike, who's explosive ordnance disposal, and Anthony, who is a combat engineer. And one of them blows stuff up and the other one disarms stuff from blowing up. So I'm going to make them fight.
We'll be right back after this quick break for ads.
In the Emergency Management Response for Dynamic Populations course, you'll master the art of managing large, diverse populations, like those at schools, hospitals, amusement parks, or stadiums. These scenarios demand rapid, adaptable responses where command and control, evacuation, mass care, medical transport and triage, public messaging, and counter-Sebring considerations are all put to the test. From October 22nd through 24th in Pueblo, Colorado, you'll dive into DIPOP training with the capstone Hot Mess Express exercise, taking on the role of an emergency manager as you lead your organization through chaos of a catastrophic train derailment. This high-intensity experience will push your skills to the limit as you work to protect and coordinate these ever-changing populations. Get ready to elevate your readiness in the most complex dynamic environments with DIPOP 2024. Class size is limited. Sign up today at thereadinesslab.com.
And then the other thing is just, I want to, spend a little bit of time today to talk about school safety stuff. School is started for certain parts of the U.S. My area starts school up next week. And there's the classic, start of the school year shuffle with teachers trying to figure out what they're responsible for. Administrators trying to get in, all of the requirements that they have to throughout the year. And then students coming in from, different areas. You might have new students who just moved into the area and stuff. And so what I'm trying to get at here is that in 7 days, it is National Preparedness Month. And for anyone, any emergency manager that has a school in your area, you should be participating and working with them to provide, your readiness training ahead of any severe events, weather, major incidents, event planning, all this stuff that, you can help schools figure out because a lot of schools don't have emergency managers. And for teachers and students, I don't think I have a huge elementary school or high school audience here, but you should be going to your schools and asking them to make sure that they're giving you the training and that you're aware of what your role is in an emergency, because that's one of the things that I hear from my wife is a teacher, and her friends is, they want to make sure that they have all of the tools available and all the knowledge that they need in the event of an emergency. So, we work with I actually volunteer with the school district to help them get their stuff squared away. And the state has started to take some really good initiatives, including writing into law some new requirements, including behavioral threat assessment teams. This is like, to me, this is the greatest thing ever, because there is so much security theater out there, and there's a handful of people. David Reedman, who is on my podcast, I'll share probably a list of all my school safety podcasts since we're coming up on that. He's done a ton of research on when, where, why, how of school shootings. There's Dr. I think it's Kenneth Trump, no relation, my understanding. He is a big advocate, sort of moving away from investing in these theater of security platforms, and behavioral threat assessment is the tool to sort of move away from that. So if you look at almost every single mass shooting that has occurred in a school setting, there were so many precursors and signs and missteps and missed opportunities to prevent the event from ever happening. That's the goal, right? In fact, emergency managers, if we're doing our job correctly, we should always be trying to mitigate or prevent. And we spend a lot of time responding, because response, not to that event, but to disasters, response is more fun than prevention and mitigation and preparedness. Like, it just is. That's a lot of work. And so I think a lot of people don't have the time to invest in that because they're so caught up in the response, either because they don't have the personnel or the money to sort of spend that time. But we want to make sure that we focus on that, because prevention beats response every single time. Both in investment and in obviously the outcomes, particularly in situations where you're talking mass violence. So prevention. How do behavioral threat assessments prevent that? Well, basically, if you give your students and your teachers and your administration, all the staff in your school buildings, the tools they need to identify someone who might be in trouble. So, it could be some training on finding risk factors, recognizing when someone is in crisis, understanding their means and capability to carry something out, and whether or not they're serious about it. And this can be done in a number of ways. The first is make sure you have great relationships with the people in your building. The second is anonymous tip lines, right? And then there was a really interesting thing that I heard at, I think it was at the National Preparedness Symposium in Anniston during the spring, that there was a school that basically advocated for all their staff. They would take all the names. They would, they'd get in their little teacher groups and stuff, and they would take all the names of the students that were on the table. And they would basically find all the names of students that they hadn't talked to or heard from recently, and to make sure that they spoke to them, because those are the kids that are slipping through the cracks. They either aren't advocating for themselves, or they're being missed because, teachers just assume everything's okay. Or something else might be going on, and making sure that they reach out and talk to them. This aligns with some stuff that you might notice now when you go into a lot of businesses. There's a security theory process where people engage with you when you walk into the building, and just to let you know, hey, I see you, I can help you, but I'm also aware of you being in here, and I want to make sure that that's clear. It's called like the hello security principle or something, but it actually is pretty effective, because if you're going in to steal something or do something bad, you don't want to be bothered by anyone in that process. And so and this is actually this also aligns with some suicide prevention stuff, right? Like when you see someone who is clearly distraught and going through, potentially a significant, mental health crisis or something else, just engaging with someone can stop them. There's a ton of evidence about this. You can read about, there's a documentary on the Golden Gate Bridge, and everyone that has jumped off that, and they talk to some of the survivors, and in some cases it's as simple as just being like, hey, are you all right? So all of these principles sort of come back to this behavioral threat assessment. So identifying, having a means to get that information, whether it's engaging with them directly, providing some sort of tip line, a process that students and staff and your faculty will feel safe utilizing to share information. And then the problem with a lot of these events is these kids were identified. They knew something bad was happening with them and it got dropped. So the threat assessment team basically captures this information. So, hey, I've got a student who is, making these violent gestures, drawings, they're stating that they want to do something bad. They're idolizing other, school shootings, and they want to, it sounds like they're serious. So I need help. And, before it was like, all right, how do we help? Like we're a school, we don't have like a process for this, or we don't have the personnel for this. By setting up a behavioral threat assessment team, and there's a few different structures that can be done with this. The Secret Service basically provides you a soup to nuts process for this. But there's a few other organizations as well. The University of Vermont right now is hiring, they contracted with one for, focusing on mostly higher education and stuff, but it's a course that's open to basically anyone. And so you just have to learn some principles, right? Like, how do you capture that? How do you intake that? And then who needs to be part of it? And the reality is basically you need some representation from everyone, right? You need some trusted teachers who can engage with the student and have a relationship with them. You need the mental health support from either your campus or some agency that's close by. Law enforcement, so that they can determine, whether or not this student has the means or the capability and is their intent. Administration, so that they can help you navigate what can we do? Can we, and a lot of the instinct is to suspend or kick someone out who, might be making violent tendencies, but that actually means you're pulling them out of the system that can help them. And now you don't know what they're up to anymore. So understanding that process, and then having a procedural assessment process. Is this student just looking for attention? Do they think they're being funny, or is it something more serious? And, this needs to be addressed. And capturing that information and then holding it if it's something that can be dealt with, because, there's a crime that's been committed, or, there's a real concern that this is going to happen shortly. You now have everyone in the room to sort of figure out a plan for them. And you also want to include the parents or guardians, family members, even friends of the student, to sort of fully understand their thought process and what state they're in. But the goal is to take that information and then stop it, right? Like get some relief, whatever the stress is, or the, treat whatever the illness is or whatever, but stop it right there. And that is the spot where we have missed so many opportunities to end violence ahead of time. The other thing that I highly want to recommend that every school, as we're coming back into this, and I cannot foot stomp this enough, is develop a school safety committee and make it very representative of your school and your district. I think every school should have one. We work in our district as a district, and then the schools have smaller, essentially subcommittees that, talk about stuff that they're dealing with in the building. But it is so effective. Everyone's sharing information. You get to get different perspectives. Make sure you include everyone. Like your facilities folks know that school better than anyone. They know where kids are sneaking in and out of the buildings. They know where they're hiding stuff. They know how to, get around they know where the cameras are. They know how students are sort of dodging cameras and, vaping in the bathroom, all that stuff. Make sure you've got teachers, make sure you got, almost everyone that's sort of involved in the behavioral threat assessment. And, this is a good opportunity as we're going into the start of the year to look and see what's on the horizon. Like, what is it that we're dealing with at the end of last year? What are we anticipating this year? And what can we do to stem, any crisis right now, so that we can, move into the new year on a good foot, and having dealt with some of our biggest concerns. And the outcome of that is that you get a hazard vulnerability assessment, basically. Like you're renewing that. You could start to see, like, if there's something that you've identified as being a major issue or a concern or a threat, build a plan for that. Build some checklists and tabletop it. Okay, we're coming in this year and we know like one of the big threats is, another pandemic or something, right? Like, do we still have our continuity of education plans in place? Can we go remote? Maybe it's severe weather. If you're in the southeast during hurricane season, you should have plans for how do you deal with a major weather event that could damage or destroy a school. I just saw there's a local high school near me. They have to shut down the entire high school. The school season. The school year hasn't even started yet, but they were doing. Vermont has a PCB testing program, and they did a test of the school, and it was found that it was too dangerous, or it was exceeded limitations enough that they can't hold classes in there. So now, for at least the fall semester, they have to figure out how they're going to run a high school from tents, trailers, whatever they can do outside of the school. And if this is not the first time this has happened. Burlington High School had to shut down because of the same thing. And they ended up actually having to open the high school in essentially an abandoned mall. They were holding classes in a Macy's. If you Google Burlington High School Macy's or mall, you'll see like there was the escalators. They still had like a lot of the signage from the mall, and that's where kids went to school for a year. So this is a real, like, imagine you're a rural community. You may not have the resources of an abandoned mall. What would you do if you had to shut down a school, or just your school got destroyed for some reason? What do you do? And if you as an emergency manager or a public safety person or a school safety person, have you thought about that? And if you haven't, the time to think about it was yesterday, but today's good enough. So get on that. And then, the other thing is relocation, family assistance centers, the aftermath stuff. A lot of people love exercising response to, the active shooter, the bad weather, whatever it is, bus accidents and stuff. The challenge, that's when you're looking at the timeline of a disaster, response is this little tiny component. Recovery is months, years. I listened to a talk at a conference not too long ago from Broward County and the Marjorie Stoneham Douglas School shooting, Parkland shooting. And, that happened, I believe it was like 3 years ago. And they just are finally finishing up the full investigation. They're going to tear down the school and, essentially move on, or tear down the portion of the school that was impacted. And now they can move on. That's years of recovery. And that's not unrealistic. If you look at anywhere where there was a major catastrophe with significant, deaths and injuries, schools take a very long time to recover. So, so schools also, it's good. Kids are getting back. They're going to be excited. My kids were a little bit bummed because we had a pretty laid back summer and they got to just hang out. We have a good neighborhood and chill, but they're also excited to go see their friends and get back into the routine of school. The other thing, school sports, remember all the stuff that happens outside of the normal school day. David Reedman will tell you that is actually where the most likely scenario is for a act of violence on a school campus is going to be in a parking lot, either before or after school, because we don't even have the theater of security there. It is just, open parking lots, and there's, typically not a lot of law enforcement or security are walking through there, and there's not a lot of cover if something does go wrong. And it's where kids fight, right? Like if you're going to get into a brawl after school, you're going to do it in the parking lot or, out behind the football field house or whatever you're going to do. And unfortunately, we have just insane amount of access to guns in this country. So where we probably would have settled it by, punching each other in the face, people are moving to guns a lot quicker. So, something to think about. And then as your school's looking at investments and stuff, I've already talked, the investment should be in people, mental health. Like for the millions of dollars that these school systems are paying for x-rays that fail, the AI systems that are not recognizing or sending false positives constantly. Or you have, we spent millions of dollars on x-ray machines and we detect someone with a gun. Now what? We don't have a cop in here who's the teacher or the administrator that has to take possession of that gun from the student and deal with that. Think about advocating for mental health investments. That will, by not just, hopefully it'll prevent it, but it also might, take a student who otherwise would be, struggling or failing, and the struggle that they would have for the rest of their life, potentially, you might be able to actually send them on the right path and stabilize their life. And that's the goal, right? Is for a school to produce a good human being when they get out of their primary education, and hopefully set them up so that they have lifelong success. The other thing is just, looking at your risks. Opioids, obviously a huge concern in a lot of cities. It's a major, major concern in our little community. We just have a lot of folks that are really, really struggling with addiction. Do you have Narcan in your school? If you don't, why not? And teaching kids how to use Narcan, because there's been countless instances of students finding their parents overdosing and not knowing what to do, right? So teach your kids CPR, teach them how to do bleeding control, and teach them how to administer Narcan. Do it in a fun way so it's not scary, but that's a reality. And if you don't think it is, you're wrong. In the vast majority of, it's amazing how much this has just become embedded in our communities. And you want kids to have the tools that they can, and even just having it in the school, like kids, they find a like fentanyl or something, and they can accidentally overdose, or they can intentionally take it, not really knowing what they're taking. So teachers, administrators, everyone should be trained in this. And if that scares you or offends you, too bad. It's reality. So we got to face reality head on. We can't pretend that this is not a situation or it's not worth teaching. It is. Same with bleeding control, right? I'm not really worried about the active shooter scenario. Like, it is still very, very, very rare to have that. Even the shootings that do occur, pretty rare. It happens a lot more than it should. Still pretty rare. But bleeding control can save you from a lot of reasons, right? Like, you reach into a sink to grab a knife in soapy water and you cut yourself. That actually happened to one of my friend's dads, and he almost bled to death, driving himself to the hospital. Thankfully, he was fairly close. So yeah, school safety stuff to think about. Preparedness Month is coming up. Do new cool stuff. I miss, when the zombie the zombie preparedness month stuff happened as The Walking Dead came out. It was amazing. You could ask someone, hey, what do you have for a preparedness kit? I don't know what a preparedness kit is. I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to have. All right. What would you do during a zombie apocalypse? Oh, I would want, this type of food. I would make sure I have, all these tools, and this is how I would survive, right? Like, it was a good way to sort of conceptualize a scenario like that. But, it's a good time to check in with your community and just, again, see what they're thinking and what their concerns are, and if there's needs that you need to go after. If we can find cool, fun ways to do that, that's even better. So we have training coming up. We're going to be doing another dynamic populations. You probably have heard the ad already in this episode, but it's going to be in Pueblo, Colorado. It's a train scenario. I believe we're blowing up a train or having some sort of real world situation. Ambipar is the big partner on this one, which is awesome. And then we have a few other partners that I don't know if I can announce them yet, but we've got a bunch of other folks coming and bringing in some equipment and tools to use during the exercise that will be really fun and make it very realistic, as well as sort of give you an idea of how you might be able to roll this stuff out when you go home. So that's in October, and I'll have information on that in the show notes. And so real quick episode solo. I just want to let you guys know I'm not dead or gone. I'm here, thriving. I'm tired, but I'm thriving. Check on your friends. I got to have dinner with one of my emergency management buddies, Jeff Bartlett. Cool dude. It was great to see him and catch up. Make sure you're building your network and you're keeping in touch with your folks. Checking in with folks that you haven't talked to in a while, like me. Making sure that they're not stressed out or going through some challenges themselves. We want them to. We want everyone to be happy, healthy, and moving into fall, which is my favorite season. So I'm actually very excited, even though these giant bags under my eyes indicate that I'm not. I'm actually very excited and pumped up for fall. That's my favorite time of year. Sweater weather. Yeah. So, all right, that's it. We'll chat soon.